Everybody loves to fish hopper patterns in the summertime, but what I've found is that I was fishing hoppers entirely wrong until I hired a friend of mine who's actually a fly fishing guide in Montana, and he showed me exactly how to use these, what patterns to use, what size of hoppers, what colors to use, and actually one thing that I was doing absolutely wrong in my entire life was I wasn't fishing them correctly. Now, the location that you're going to want to fish a hopper is absolutely critical. You know, the type of hopper that you use is not nearly as important as where you put that hopper. Of course, everybody knows you're going to fish that hopper, it's a dry fly, and you're going to put it on the bank to fish, right? That's what I thought, but I was wrong about how close to the bank you needed to be. These fish, especially bigger fish, as you're going around bends of rivers are going to give undercut banks, and those fish are going to be literally, their fin is going to be touching the bank. If you're not literally touching the bank with your fly, and that's a little bit of an exaggeration, you're not going to be catching fish, especially the bigger fish. The biggest fish that we caught in Montana on a dry fly, really cool situation, came around a bend, and my guide saw way ahead of me like, hey, there's an undercut bank right there. And it took me a very long time to actually understand what he was talking about, because he was not only looking farther ahead than I was used to looking. Most people in the drift boat are just looking down. Those guys are looking like a quarter mile down the river, spotting areas for you to fish. So look up like at the horizon. That's where they're looking, and that's where you guys can be on the same page. But I wasn't fishing close enough to the bank. If you're not losing flies, if you're not catching up on the grass, you aren't fishing flies close enough to the bank. That's why it's a little bit difficult to fish dry flies when you're waiting, because fishing the bank that you're on is very, very difficult. But if you're in the middle of the river and you're fishing the opposite bank, that is where you're going to get a lot of your eats and a lot of your takes on a hopper pattern, because you need to be fishing close to the bank, and it's really difficult to do that and get a nice drift unless you're fishing and you have a really nice area that you can access both sides of the river, fish this bank, fish that bank. Another thing is that not areas are all created equal for hopper fishing. So if you're hopper fishing on a bank, you know, what you're looking for is a fast seam with a little slow pocket of water right next to it, so that you can get that targeted right exactly where those fish are, especially the big fish. They're sitting in areas that are deep and very, very, very slow moving, and they're just sitting looking up for something to come out. They may come out a little bit, but you're gonna wanna get it as close to the bank as possible. Sometimes this is really difficult too, because when you're casting, when you're making a long cast and slapping it right on the bank, you have to be very, very, very accurate with your cast. And to be honest with you, it takes a long time to actually get that skill. I've been fly fishing for 28 years, so you would think that I'm just a pro at getting my fly in there. That is not the case. It takes me a long time to actually get accustomed to it. If I'm doing a float trip, it'll take me till the end of the day till I can actually get it where the guide wants me to get it. And that is literally coming right off the bank. Sometimes you can actually get your fly to hit the grass and actually jump off the grass into the water and plop into the water. Just let it sit there. Sometimes you can get, so in other words, when you're going down the river, if you can actually skip it off the bank or actually get it up on the bank and slowly get it in the water, you're going to want to have this drift, just dead drift. You're not going to want any movement on that hopper, because generally the hoppers are going to flop into the water and then they kind of get turned around and they get swept away, and that's where those trout target them. Generally, I mean, you can twitch it, and it's not that fish won't eat it if it is not twitch. I would just do tiny, tiny little twitches if you're not getting any action. But generally it's a dead drift. So you're plopping it right into that right location. You're giving it one big mend so that you can get the longest drift possible before that faster current gets it out of the slower current, which is where all the fish are. The other thing is that looking forward, like I was mentioning earlier, as far as you can to hit those banks, because you have to get lined up. If you have a really good guide, a lot of these guys are really like ninjas. They have the drift boat and they're getting that boat perfectly aligned for you to cast in there. When they're lining everything up, make a couple of false casts right before you pretty much get one shot per bucket. So one shot per bank access, where you're going to get, where a lot of those big fish, those bigger fish are generally going to be tucked up in these very, very skinny water that is very, very specific. And when you learn exactly what to look for, then you can be on the same page as a guide. A lot of times the guide is like, hey, get that pocket up right there, get that grassy bank. All the banks are grassy the entire way down. The other thing is that June and July are very good months. September is actually an excellent month for hopper season. The guides are going to know when to use them. The guides love using these. Generally, they're not going to put droppers below them, because when you're fishing tight to the bank, you don't want to have excess line below there. It's impossible to cast the hopper right on the bank or skipping, several inches, maybe 2 inches off the bank. if you have a dropper on there. You're just gonna get snagged up, you're gonna snag the bottom, you're gonna snag the weeds, snag the grass. So generally, if you are fishing hoppers, you just only wanna be fishing that hopper unless you're searching water for different pockets and different seams that are in the middle of the river, and that's okay. But this video is definitely opened my eyes a lot, and the way I was fishing hoppers was I just wasn't fishing close to the bank. Now, what kind of patterns are you gonna be fishing for hoppers? The Morris hopper is my #1 favorite. A bunch of different colors. The sizes you're gonna use, 10s, 12s are going to be a really good size for you. 14s is a little bit small, but 10s and 12s in the Morris hopper. You have Dave's hopper. You have all these different types of hoppers. You're going to want to make sure that they're floating really high, and then the hook isn't bent. That's one of the things that I see with these hopper patterns a lot is you're fishing and then you look at your hook's actually bent to the side. So check it every once in a while. Make sure there's no grass on the bottom of it and that the hook is actually upright. Because in my opinion, the hook sets on a lot of these are actually very funky because they usually have long shank on them. Sometimes those hook sets are not very easy, and I have missed so many fish on hoppers. I remember fishing with my buddy in September for hoppers, and those fish would just come up and explode the surface, and I would pull it to the side, I'd pull it up, and I probably missed 9 out of 10 of them. Really humbling, really embarrassing, but just kind of a cool situation to see those fish just blow up the water like a grenade. Some of the fishing that we've done in Montana specifically has just been so dynamite with hopper fishing that, yeah, you definitely want to work on your casts. I gave you the names of a couple hoppers, longer leaders for this so you can get them closer to the bank. Make sure your casts are perfect. Look farther in the water and you're going to catch a lot more. And a lot of this is coming from a drift boat, but you can do this wading too. It's just not nearly as effective, which is my whole thing about going in a drift boat is far more effective than wading, just because you can cover way, way, way more water. And hire a guide to do this. Hire a guide to teach you exactly where to fish so you can have some of the knowledge that I'm coming with about fishing hoppers, because the more that you fish with guides, the more you learn, the better of a fisherman you're gonna be. So don't be afraid to do that. And talk with the guys in the fly shop. There's so many dry fly patterns for hoppers that I would just like to keep it simple and just have a few colors and a few sizes of, let's say, the Morris hopper. That's my #1 hopper that I've had success. Just simply, not from my experience, but that's what the guides use. The guides really like those. So hope you like this video. Hope you guys can learn a little bit more about hopper fishing. And if you want to know anything more about hopper fishing or fishing in Montana or which guides to go with, whatever it is, definitely leave me a comment in the comment section down below. Leave me a comment section down below if you want to know any more information about this, which guides to go with, that kind of thing, what flies to use. If you have a really cool hopper pattern that you've used that has worked really well, definitely share it. Let us know. There's no way to leave a picture in there, but just maybe leave a link so that people can see what type of fly that you're using that you've had a lot of success with. So hope you enjoyed watching this video, and thanks for watching.